Okay, besides these twines, really variables and logic are going to be the key. And I was going to save them for a little later, but I think I'll do it since we have this opportunity right now to start talking about those things. So what I'm going to do is kind of go back to where we were, where we have these separate ones from this false choice. So I'm going to click in here and I'm going to say, great, let's celebrate. And I will say, you go out partying and let's go to work. I'm going to say, you arrive at your office and you go out partying the night before. Okay, that sounds good. And so I'll close that. And so now that brings us back to this here. And I'm going to go ahead and leave day one there because we're going to go back to that in this in a second. So again, we're going to use this opportunity. When you set a variable, you really need it to go to a passage. There's no way to set a variable with like someone typing something input or something like that, or at least not really easily out of the box. So we're going to go into you go out partying. And so this is where we're going to set a variable. And what is a variable? A variable is you could think of it as a container that holds some type of data. And there's various types of data that you can do. There are things like strings, which just basically means a bunch of characters, right? Some words or some letters. There are numbers, but there's two types of numbers. There's integers, like an integer is a whole number, like one is an integer. And then there's something called floats, and floats are a number that has some decimal places, basically. And then there's the last thing that they'll allow you to do in this called a Boolean. And so Boolean are keywords. You can either use true or you can use false to set a variable, right? So we're going to set a variable and we're going to go into it. And what we do is we say, so notice I created a parentheses, opening parentheses, and I say set, and I put this colon. Now I have to set our variable, and this twine uses like some weird things I'm not used to from writing JavaScript and stuff. It uses some weird keywords to set things. So I'm going to first create the variable. So I'm going to create that variable set, and so you start a variable with the $sign. And now you can name your variable anything. It just can't start with numbers, and obviously it cannot have any spaces in it or anything. So I'm going to call this I don't know, I'm just going to call this choice 1 just to do it there. And we're going to use, I'm going to use the keyword to set the variable. And then I'm going to set this to, and now this is going to be a string. So I'm going to say party, right? And that's it. So right now I've set that to party. And now they won't see this when we do this. So I'm going to go ahead and go down and write in some text for them to see. You go out partying the night before. You really tie one on, but you're able to shake it off in the morning to head out to work. And so now you're going to just say, and I'm just going to make this one day 1 right here, right? Because remember I told you I wanted to go to that day 1. We already have that built there. And I'm going to actually copy this so that I don't have to type it out on the second one. I'm going to close this, right? Day 1. We're going to arrive at our office. This time I'm going to say work, right? So now I've decided to go to work. And, right? And so it says, you are so excited to get to work. You sit in the parking lot waiting to go in. I don't know. Something like that. And then, of course, we're going to go to day 1. Okay, so there, I'll close it here. And just basically, I've got us going to day 1. And so right now, we don't have any, anything that comes from that variable. So what I'm going to do is just show you how to, if you need it to print the variable, what would happen. And then I'll make a separate video on the logic of doing something with the video. So I'm going to say print colon, and I'll say, what do we call it? Choice 1 right there. And that's all I'm going to do, just to show us that we changed the variable. So I'm going to close this, right? And I'll say play, and I'm going to go celebrate. You really tie one on. And of course I partied. Now if I wanted to go back, great, let's go to work. Day 1, work. So you see we can just simply print our variable, but it's more helpful to use logic, and I'll make a separate video.